Terry Barber is a best-selling author and founder of Lighthouse Catholic Media. Jesse Romero is a retired law enforcement officer, a former kickboxing champion with a master's degree in theology. And together, they share a passion for evangelization and PhDs in common sense. You're listening to The Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. To join the show, call 888-526-2151. Here's Terry and Jesse.
I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. That's Psalm 116. Today's psalm at Holy Mass is totally Eucharistic. You can see all the typology in the Old and Old Testament and in the book of Psalms referring to Jesus Christ and the Eucharist. But switching gears, you know something? Divorce is so painful. I don't know what it's like personally. It's all around my family, but I've never experienced the pain of divorce because my parents were married until death did them part, literally. And my wife's parents were also married until death did them part. So both of us on both sides of our family, at least our parents, we're not talking about our siblings. On our parents' side, they gave us a pretty good example. And, you know, I noticed that children of divorce, a lot of them are resilient. And what I mean by that, a lot of them suffer, but they suffer in secret. And there's a Catholic author who just wrote a book. Her name is Lila Miller. And the book is called Primal Loss, The Now Adult Children of Divorce. She's 50 years old. She has 8 children. She has 5 grandchildren. And she was interviewed recently. She says, I really didn't want to write this book, but she says she's on Facebook. She's very active on Facebook. She has a discussion page. She said she put out some questions out there off the top of her head on divorce. And she said she was blown away to see the hundreds of volunteers of people that answered her questions in 2 days. And she says, when I saw all the responses, I felt impelled by God to turn this into a book.
I think it's a fantastic book, but not only is it a fantastic book, here's what she said. She was raised Catholic. Does she relate to you? Listen to this. She said she never missed Mass on Sunday or any holy day, but I was poorly catechized. Does that sound like you? Yeah, that's a typical statement for that generation, sadly. Eventually, she fell into serious sin, as well as becoming a lapsed Catholic. And while still believing myself as devout, does that relate to you? Wow, I hear this all the time. She graduated from Boston College with a BA in English. Then she worked in direct marketing until her husband, Dean, they had their first child. They had 3 kids, right? She said, then we were done. Does that sound like you? Wow. My husband was Jewish. She said, I was a lapsed Catholic. So Dean was ready to have a vasectomy. Ultimately, my reversion and conversion happened around the same time, and he never went through with it, thanks be to God. Dean was baptized, confirmed, and received his first Holy Communion on my 30th birthday, Easter Vigil, 1997. Here's the kicker. She was the RCIA teacher for him. When we never looked back, and then we had 5 more children to our family since that time. Now, this is the key. Her reversion came about because of her desire to find a firm foundation in a crazy culture. Does that sound like you? Since I was raised in a small child, she said, my local parish priest, and I'm sorry to say this is what happened to her. It was so watered down, she said, I'd have to call it liberal, where I was drawn to my friend's Bible church, where they preached the teachings of Christ and the moral law and strong apologetics. See, this happened so many of us in that generation. When I mentioned carefully to my mom, Jesse had this happen to him. One night, I would probably be leaving the Catholic Church for Protestantism. She's a convert. She advised me to find out what you're leaving before you leave it. Man, say that again. And later, she followed up, the mother giving her a book by Carl Keating, famous book, Catholicism and Fundamentalism. And she said, I've never seen a Catholic apologist before, and it changed my life. Praise God.
I'm looking at her story, and I'm seeing, wow.
Yeah.
How many, this has happened at 10, this is a microcosm of what happened in Southern California.
Yep.
We're around the same age.
Sure.
I was about to leave the Catholic Church as well. Same story. My mom, said, find out what the Catholic Church teaches. My mom says, start investigating. I did the same thing. Guess what's the first book that I read before I was about to leave the Catholic Church? Catholicism versus Fundamentalism. The exact same thing that happened to this lady happened to me. The exact same thing. And what happened? Exact same thing. I come back to the church. I'm on fire. I'm in love with God. I'm learning my faith. And what happens? I run into one progressive parish after another, and I'm saying, wow, this doesn't look like the church that I read on paper. But nonetheless, I've matured, and I've realized that the fact is Jesus told us that there will be weeds that grow next to the wheat.
Yep.
Jesus has told us that there will be good fish and bad fish in the net of Peter. Jesus has warned us that there will be wheat and chaff. In other words, the fact of the matter is, there's going to be, within the body of Christ, there's going to be people that are there that are lukewarm. There's going to be people there that are there just because they're cultural Catholics. But the fact is, don't look to the left or the right. Keep your eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. But I'll tell you, she ends the interview by saying, what impact do you hope this book is going to have? I haven't read the book, but she says that she says, I hope and pray that people who read my book will never again be complacent. I think that's a key issue.
Oh, yeah.
To be complacent about no-fault divorce. Let me just give a little history. No-fault divorce was passed in 1970 in California, the first state, and from there, all the other 49 states picked up on it. She also says, I hope that we won't be complacent about our acceptance of divorce as necessary when a spouse is just not happy any longer. And I hope the myths that children are resilient and children are happy when their parents are happy die a much-needed death. I think what she's doing is trying to highlight our conscience, or prick our conscience, and realize that people have to really reflect a lot deeper than they do these days before they go get a divorce lawyer. I think that's the point of her article.
Absolutely. And she also says there's countless people, maybe you, who's listening, in their 40s and 50s and even in their 60s, who still cannot speak the truth out of fear of hurting their parents or getting attacked for speaking. And since I published the book, she said, I've seen those attacks happen. I suppose I wouldn't speak either if it weren't for them. After all, they have already learned the conflict can lead to permanent separation and so remain quite quiet. I just want to mention at this time, if you're a person who's come back to the church, I have something that's very good for you. Father Donald Calloway, he did a DVD, couple of them, Mary and the Mystery of Femininity. What a great DVD to give to a woman, your mother, your wife, and I'm going to give it away. Just pay the shipping. Also, Jesus, I Trust in Thee. 2 videos by one of my favorite priests. I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this 40 years. He's the top guy, as far as I'm concerned, who's on the fire for the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ as a priest in the church today. And he's not afraid to speak the truth in charity. He was he was a former drug addict. He was a former womanizer, and he got hit over the head with Our Lady. And I want you to get these DVDs by calling 877-526-215. And if you don't get one on the line, we'll call you back because everybody calls for these. Father Calloway, Mary and the Mystery of Femininity, and Jesus, I Trust in You, Discovering Divine Mercy by Exhibit A, Father Donald Calloway. 877-526-215, or go online to CatholicRC.org.
If you want to see the beautiful teachings of the Catholic Church, people basically always want to say, well, prove it. Prove your point. I'm going to make a statement that I'm going to prove it. The Catholic Church, when you're a practicing Catholics have the lowest divorce rate. Did you hear what I just said? I'll say it again. Practicing Catholics have the lowest divorce rate.
Yep.
How can you insulate yourself so that you can have a less than 5% chance of divorcing your spouse? Let's be honest. I know there's a lot of people that have been divorced, but that's why I'm giving you this statistic so it doesn't happen again, and so you can give it to your kids as well. Okay, Dr. Janet Smith did a study on this. Okay, she used to be a professor she's a professor, by the way, at Sacred Heart Major Seminary and Ave Maria University. She wrote a book. It's called Humanae Vitae, A Generation Later. It's put out by Ignatius Press. And in that book, she basically says, let me give you her synthesis. She says, practicing Catholics have a less than 5% divorce rate if they practice their faith and live according to the moral teachings of the Catholic Church. Did you hear that?
Well said.
You know that divorce has wreaked havoc upon our society. Do you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem? I don't know about you. I want to be part of the solution. If being a practicing Catholic is part of the solution, guess what? I'm in.
We're going to come back after this quick break. We're going to talk about increasing vocations. Isn't rocket science. My time is, it's not brain surgery either. It's pretty simple. So when we come back, we'll talk about that. I want to remind you that Terry and Jesse is going to fill in for Joe Sikora on Monday through Friday next week at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So we're going to have 3 hours being with you. So get the coffee out, get the tea out, Coke, or whatever you want to drink. We're going to be on Drive Time next week with you. So tell your friends. And if you want to get Father Donald Calloway's CD, or DVD actually, there's 2 DVDs, Mary and the Mystery of Femininity. Wow, how women are uniquely designed by God to reflect the glory. This is such a great DVD. It's yours. You just call 877-526-2151. You just pay the shipping and the handling. Or get his DVD where he explains divine mercy. Jesus, I trust in thee. Call 877-526-2151. We come back, we're going to talk about something very important. Increasing vocations, priesthood. Don't turn that dial. We'll be back in a moment.
Back to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. Want to join the conversation? Call 888-526-2151. Now here's Terry and Jesse.
Why is it that some dioceses, their vocations are booming? Some dioceses, the vocations are dying. Why is it? We're all Catholic. We all believe in the same thing. We all have the same creed. We all have the same 7 sacraments. We all have the same clergy. There's a great article written by Brian Williams. It's called Increasing Vocations Isn't Rocket Science. I agree 100% with this article. In a nutshell, it says this. Where are vocations increasing? He says, wherever traditional Catholicism blooms.
Yep, that's it.
In other words, the traditional reverent liturgies, traditional reverent Catholic schools, traditional reverent religious orders. Here's what Bishop Tobin of Providence, Rhode Island said about the ongoing crisis in his diocese. Then we're going to juxtapose what he says with 3 other dioceses that are booming. But Bishop Tobin said this, quote, he's from the Diocese of Providence, Rhode Island. He says, quote, some clergy numbers in the Diocese of Providence to think about. Since the beginning of this decade, we've lost 58 priests from active ministry in the Diocese of Providence, due mostly to retirement, and we've ordained just 18. That's a net loss of 40 priests from active ministry in the diocese. The median age of active priests is 59. The median age of all priests, including retirees, is 67. There are just 21 priests under the age of 40 in his diocese. Of course, the dire conditions facing faithful Catholics in Providence isn't unique to them alone. Priest shortages, anemic ordination classes, and overwhelming statistics for seminary enrollment do not bode well for the coming years. In response to these bleak conditions, much of the church hierarchy looks for the latest program, initiative, or marketing scheme to solve their vocation crisis. This sentence nails it. I'll turn it over to Terry. It says this. Increasing vocations isn't rocket science. We already know the answer. Wherever traditional Catholicism blooms, vocations boom.
I can give a couple examples from this article that I personally have had experience with. Well, number one, there's a diocese in Lincoln, Nebraska, where only 100,000 registered Catholics, right? Are you ready? In the recent 24-month span, Lincoln ordained 17 men to the priesthood. And Lincoln is the only diocese in the United States to place in the top 20 for a ratio of ordinations to population in every survey since the early 90s. Now, I before I go to the other dioceses, I'll just say this. I remember years ago, and this is not politically correct to say this, but I'm tired, or I don't know about you, but I'm tired of saying, oh, yeah, what we need to do is have better marketing. Oh, we need to have better lighting. We got to have a graphic artist to do this. Baloney! You want vocations? Give them the faith. And so Lincoln, Wichita, I give you all the statistics in this article. Wichita, Kansas. I go there next week for the family conference. I meet these seminarians. You know what else? They're traditional. They're implementing what Fulton J. Sheen does, daily holy hour. That's where they're getting their vocations. We talked about this a month ago. It's not brain surgery. It's simple. Here's a good one. The Charlotte Diocese, all right? That's like in the in South Carolina. Okay, now they're there's only a couple percent of people that are Catholic in that area, right? They're the southern part of the country. And here's what happened. They started open up a seminary, St. Joseph Seminary, for young men discerning a priestly vocation, and they immediately filled it up with 8 seminarians. While the Charlotte Diocese ordained 5 men to the priesthood this year, they've also had to expand the seminary in its second year for an additional 9 more seminarians. Now, both dioceses are known for what? The way they part their hair? No! For they're known for their orthodoxy in embracing tradition. The Diocese of Lincoln, okay, everybody, now don't throw an egg at me. Really, I mean this, everyone, because this is going to irritate some people. They're not allowing women on the altar for girls, okay, to serve. And they're not white. They're trying to get the men, okay, in the sanctuary so that they know vocations come from this. 8 out of 10 men that are ordained said they served at the altar. See, I know for a fact, and I'll turn it back to Jesse, in Wichita, Kansas, which I go for the last 20 years for the family conference, that diocese is on fire for vocations. They have Catholic school system where, guess what? Are you ready for this, everybody? Their vocations? Nobody pays a fee to go to the Catholic schools. What? Try that in Phoenix or Los Angeles or any other place we're in. This is an amazing diocese, and what they're doing is getting vocations. And I'll just say one thing. I remember reading in the National Catholic Register a group of bishops. I'm sorry, let's just say leaders. I'll say bishops. Okay, they were bishops. I'm trying to be nice about it, but they came to Lincoln and they said, "What are you doing?" Bishop Broshevich, he's the bishop who actually brought Scott Hahn into the Catholic Church. Are you ready for that? He was in Milwaukee at the time. Now he's the bishop there in Lincoln. They come and say, "What are you doing to get so many vocations?" He explains it all to them. It's traditional Catholicism. They look at him and say, "Oh, we're not interested." So God have mercy on them, because they had the answer right there. And I know here in Los Angeles, our vocations are booming with Archbishop Gomez right now. We've had the largest crop in 20 years. I know the guys in the seminary, they're getting better. We're getting, I'm just going to say it, orthodoxy back. Because what heterodox does is it brings people out of the church. Orthodoxy brings us in. And that's my take after 40 years of being a layman in the church.
Good analysis, good perspective. You've been there. Somebody asked me a question. Again, this question keeps coming up on emails. Jess, what's your position and Terry's position on the spiritual ramifications of illegal immigration? I like that question. The spiritual ramifications. Go to my blog today, and I wrote an article on the spiritual. I come at it from a very Catholic point of view. What are the spiritual ramifications? And also somebody asked me, "Jesse, what is liberation theology? And is liberation theology an error? Is liberation theology an error?" If you want to see what liberation theology is, I blogged about that as well. So I talk about the errors of liberation theology, and I also revisit the topic on what are the spiritual implications of illegal immigration. The spiritual. One of the things you'll see, it breeds antinomianism. You want to know what that means?
Yeah, what's that word mean? Explain it.
Yeah. Antinomianism, basically, it was a heresy back in the first and second century, where a lot of Christians, Catholic Christians, were basically saying, "Hey, I don't have to follow the commandments as long as I believe in Jesus. So as long as I believe, that's all that's necessary. I don't have to necessarily follow the commandments." And so that's called the heresy of antinomianism. That's those believers that are anti-law. That's what antinomianism means in Greek. So if you want to read about that in Liberation Theology, go to my blog. Going back to this article, it names 3 dioceses here that are just booming with vocations. Things are getting better in other parts that are going to more traditional teachings. For example, L.A., the good things are happening there. Diocese of Phoenix under Bishop Olmsted. Great things have been happening here in this seminary since he's been here. And it's because all of them realize that the Catholic Church didn't start in 1965. The Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years. So, you know, when people start talking about pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II, Cardinal Ratzinger, he writes against that. Pope Benedict, he says no. He says, really, that's fallacious because there is no break. There's not 2 churches. There's not a pre or post Vatican II church. It's the Catholic Church. And a lot of these bishops that are now bringing, again, more reverence, allowing ad orientem during masses. A lot of them bringing in the FSSP, allowing the Latin Mass to come in. A lot of them allowing the traditional orders with full habits. These are the dioceses now that are experiencing a boom in vocations. And the article names 3. Charlotte, North Carolina, Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, and Lincoln, Nebraska.
Well said, Jesse. Folks, when we come back, I'd love to have more of this been written to you. You go on our website, catholicrc.org. You can read the whole article because it's tremendous article. But we don't have time. We only have an hour to do this. Just don't forget, we're going to be on next week for 3 hours a day. Thanks be to God. We'll be on our regular show. And then Joe Sikora is going on vacation. Monday through Friday we'll be there, so we'll have more time. Go to jesseromero.com or catholicresource.org to get your material. I want to encourage you to pick up Father Donald Calloway's DVD, Jesus, I Trust in You, Explains Divine Mercy. This is a DVD for anybody. You have a friend that's left the church. Let them watch Father Calloway. Also, Mary and the Mystery of Femininity. I got to tell you, I'm convinced the women who rock the cradle run the world. If we can get Mom right now on fire and look at her role as the Blessed Virgin Mary did, I think you're going to learn how women's beauty is best modeled by what they say and do and not how they look. That's what Father Calloway said. You can get this by calling 877-526-2151 or go online to catholicrc.org, 877-526-2151. And don't forget, when we come back, we're going to be covering a topic about a Pew research that shows that emerging consensus for religious institutions.
Let me give you Fulton Sheen's quote of the day. It's called The Chosen People. Today, he says, Archbishop Sheen says, how does God deal with humanity when humanity begins to multiply? Out of all the peoples of the world, God chooses one people to be his people. This group, this corporation, or this special people are to be the means of bringing salvation to everybody else in the world. Who are these people? People of Israel. And he called them first through Abraham. He governed them through Moses. He ruled them through the judges and kings. He threatened, pleaded, and coaxed them, warned them, and loved them through the prophets. Over and over in the Old Testament, we find God who loves humanity deals with them through this particular group, the Israelites. In his own word, God says in the book of Exodus, you shall be my peculiar possession above all people, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a priestly kingdom, a holy nation. And again, God speaks and says, you shall be my people, and I shall be your God. Praise the Lord. Thank you for those promises.
We'll be right back.
This is Bishop David O'Connell, and you're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio.
Back to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. Want to join the conversation? Call 888-526-2151. Now here's Terry and Jesse.
Does this surprise you? Listen to this title of this article. Pew poll shows an emerging consensus for religious institutions. Are you surprised by that? Does that warm your heart? Do you feel like, wow, common sense is making a comeback? It's an inspirational article that talks about that in America, there's this consensus for religious freedom. Here's some of the tidbits of the article done by Pew Research Center. So this isn't our opinion, Terry or Jesse.
Nope.
The Pew Center asked Americans whether they thought religious institutions had a positive or negative effect on the way things are going in our country. Happily, it says conservative Republicans reported a positive view of religious institutions, 75-12. Liberal Democrats, they were more negative. They were 44-40, a stark contrast. Mm-hmm. But here is the surprise. And this is the article. This isn't me speaking.
Make that point, yes.
It says the anti-religious left is alone. The article says moderate Republicans reported a positive view of churches, 68-20, and moderate Democrats positive view of church, 58-29. So here's the good news. This puts moderate Democrats only 18 points behind moderate Republicans in their positive assessment of religious institutions. And moderate Republicans, in turn, are only 7 points short of conservative Republicans. So here's the crux of the article, what it's basically saying. It says that there's only a small minority of Americans, a small minority, that view religious institutions negatively. And that would be the far left, okay? Not just the left or the liberals, but the far left. And so what the article is basically saying, that moderate Democrats are becoming more and more divided from far left Democrats. Though they're both part of the same party, moderate Democrats, they like religious institutions. They accept it. They want this. They feel it's good for our country. So there's a divide, the article says, between far left Democrats who basically want nothing to do with religion. So the good thing is that within that party, I think there's going to be at least a reformation or a council or something where they've got to get this straight, because the moderate Democrats are not putting up with it any longer. And they're saying, we need religious toleration in this country.
I'll just say thanks be to God that they are doing that. In this article, there's a lot more in it. You can go to CatholicRC.org or JesseRomero.com to get the full statistics, and you can look at these. Our lines are lit up, so let's go to Sacramento, California. Fran, welcome to the Terry and Jesse Show.
Oh, thank you so much, Terry and Jesse. It's been a while since I called.
Good.
I just want to say God bless you to you both.
Thank you.
And I am a traditional Latin Catholic participant in Sacramento, California at St. Stephen's, the First Martyr.
Great.
And I don't know if you know the FSSP, that's the Fraternity of St. Peter.
Of course.
Oh, it's amazing, amazing. And I just wanted to tell you, thank you for bringing this out in the forefront. People are just loving the traditional. I talk to youngsters, and they say how they're looking for structures, and I guide them towards the traditional Latin Catholic Mass. And it's just amazing. I've seen the Novus Order. Not that it's bad. I'm not saying anything negative. I'm just saying that, the lacks of not teaching. I was not catechized until I started listening to you guys.
Good.
And to the Catholic radio. And I just want to say thank you, and God bless you. And I know my mother in heaven is saying thank you.
Amen. Fran, God love you too. And both forms of the Mass are legitimate in the church, and we encourage people. I would say that, Fran, for those who have never been to a Latin Mass, they should go. I actually, I'll be honest with you, I go to 2 Latin Masses a week here at the Sacred Heart Chapel. It's a Novus Ordo Latin Mass, and I know my parts of the Mass in Latin, and I enjoy it, but I also enjoy the English Mass, as long as that, there's no, little funny business that goes on sometimes, but I don't find that too often anymore. Years ago, I found it more. But, Fran, thanks for your call, and may God bless you and your work up there in Sacramento.
And the FSSP, wherever they're establishing a presence,
yep.
There's good things happening there. They're a very good, solid order of Catholic priests that are doing wonderful things in the Catholic Church. I have many friends in the FSSP.
Yep.
In fact, I was flying back about 3 weeks ago, and I saw a priest that had his full cassock on, and he was walking down the aisle. I said, "Father, there's a seat next to me." And he sat next to me. We talked the whole time. Yep, he was an FSSP priest. He was coming back home out here to Phoenix. Hey, let's go to Rose in Oakland. Rose, you're on the Terry and Jesse Show. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I listen to you about every day. I'll be real fast. The Institute of Christ the King, Sovereign Priest, that order, they have a lot of vocations as traditional Latin Mass. Mm-hmm. And also I wanted to say, did I hear in your program that in India they had mass conversions, like 50,000, or am I mistaken?
Great question.
Yeah, we just had the article the other day. You can go on our archives, CatholicRC.org, and you can type in 50,000 Hindus convert to Catholicism. I think we did that program last week, so the article's still in the archives there at CatholicRC.org. And not only that, I've also heard from Indian priests. There's a very powerful apostolate amongst the Indians called Shalom Ministries. And I've been told by many Indian Catholic brothers from Shalom Ministries that there is a renaissance, a rebirth of Catholicism in India. In part also I've heard by many wonderful Indian priests is because of the charismatic renewal. They're having monthly events out there in India where they get like 10,000 Hindus and Muslims, and they witness miracles. They do holy hours with the Blessed Sacrament. They call upon the healing power of Jesus, and miracles are happening amongst Hindus and Muslims, and there's mass conversions also as a result of adoration in combination with the charismatic renewal. So good things are happening there.
Rose, thank you for that. And Rose, I've met some of the Indian people here in Los Angeles at conferences, and they've told me exactly what Jesse said is going on. And they're from Kerala. That's the state south, the furthest south state of India where St. Thomas the Apostle was buried. These people are on fire. I've met so many Indian priests and lay people that are just spirit-driven Catholics. And that's why I encourage the renewal there. Yes, it's going there. We actually have a renewal in our own country, and people like Father Donald Calloway from the Marian Helpers with promoting divine mercy. Miracles are taking place there. And if you've never heard of Father Donald Calloway, he is an amazing priest who was non-Catholic. He's a convert, and he's lighting fires in the Catholic Church. He did a DVD called Jesus, I Trust in You, Discovering Divine Mercy. I'll give that away. Also, Mary and the Mystery of Femininity. And what Father Calloway does is he looks at Our Lady, and he talks about how women's strength is best exemplified in her femininity, and how Mary and every mother carries within her forever a mystical union with her child, and how women are uniquely designed by God to reflect His glory. This is all in that DVD. Call 877-526-2151. You can get that, or go online to CatholicRC.org. I want you to pass it on to a Catholic that's been away from the church to bring them back, because the renewal has started.
It talks about, basically, it's called Pew Poll Shows an Emerging Consensus for Religious Institutions. It basically shows right now that there's a fight within the Democrat Party. There's moderate Democrats that want God, that believe in God, and that believe that religion is a good thing. Then you have far-left Democrats that want nothing to do with God. So within the party, they're having their own reformation, which is a good thing. And I hope the Democrats of faith win the day. I think it would be good for the country. But here's what the article says regarding that fight that's going on within the DNC. It says, quote, when Democrats couldn't get through a convention without booing the mention of God, that was in 2012, or heckling a preacher's opening prayer, it looked ugly to the American people. All that is, except for the far left, which the Pew poll shows to be totally out of touch with the majority of Americans. When Democrats ran a presidential candidate who openly said, quote, deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed, that was Hillary Clinton, in order to lay the groundwork for progress, the party was playing to a bitter minority on the far left. When leaked emails revealed Hillary's staffers jeered at Catholic converts, making fun of Catholic converts, and said, quote, they must be attracted to the systematic thought and severely backwards gender relations, close quote, it became very clear that the Clinton campaign was a part of that bitter far-left minority. And no wonder American voters basically rejected Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party in 2016. I'm reading from the article. This is in Jesse Romero. It says, If the Democrat Party continues to let the anti-religious left dictate their messaging and policy positions, they will attract only a few to their cause. Last sentence. The rest of us will just see the Democrat Party as the party that has no respect for our religious institutions and wants to take away our religious liberty. Well-written article. Get it from our CatholicRC.org, JesseRomero.com. It's called Pew Poll Shows an Emerging Consensus for Religious Institutions.
Up next, I've got an amazing story. All of you know Steve Ray. Wait till you hear what happened at the airport with Steve Ray. You're not going to want to miss that. And we're going to talk about this. Have you thought about the media, how it throws a hissy fit over people praying with the president? Yes, we're going to talk about that, so you don't want to miss that. Also, don't hesitate to call me. I'll give you those DVDs of Father Calloway, 2 of them. One on his Jesus I Trust in Thee video on Divine Mercy, and Mary, the Mystery of Femininity. 2 powerful videos by a very powerful priest, Father Donald Calloway. Call 877-526-2151. When we come back, wait to hear the Steve Ray story. Don't turn that dial.
This is Dr. Scott Hahn, and you are listening to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio.
Steve Ray is no lukewarm Catholic.
No.
You know who he is. We've had him here. I call him Jerusalem Jones. He's an expert on the Holy Land. He's the one that got those DVDs called Footprints of God. He's an incredible convert to the Catholic faith from Baptist to Catholicism. He's here in Phoenix. He's working on a new movie called Elijah and Elisha. He's doing post-production work, so his studio, or the studio that he hires to do it, it's out here in Phoenix. Well, guess what? Steve just blocked on his webpage that he was, it's titled, I Rebuked a Pornhub Pervert at the Airport by Steve Ray. This doesn't surprise me because this guy's on fire, and this guy's not a PC Catholic.
Nope.
He writes this. I noticed a young man, as I arrived at the airport, I noticed a young man with a hoodie sweatshirt with an insignia boldly printed on the sweatshirt. It said, Pornhub Premium. I knew what this was since I had recently posted a blog about it. People watched 4,392,486,580 hours of porn on Pornhub just in 2015. And that's just one website. That's the equivalent of every person on planet Earth watching 12 porn videos in 2015. And that's not all the porn sites. That's just one, Pornhub. This site promotes abuse, degradation, torture, and slavery of women. Steve says, as I was walking past the guy, I came back by him again, and I told my wife, I'll be back in a minute.
Sounds like you, Jesse.
Sounds like you, Terry.
I know.
I can see Terry doing that also. I can see myself doing that.
Yep.
Birds of a bear, they're flocked together.
Amen,
so
brother.
Steve says, I walked through the gate. I walked through the crowd at this gate. I walked up to him and in front of everyone and said, you should be ashamed to wear a sweatshirt like that. He tried to ignore me, so I said, you're a pervert. A moment of shocked silence. I waited for him to take a swing at me, but he just looked down. I walked back to my wife and to our gate. I wish everyone in the airport would have confronted this vulgar excuse for a man, but we are too polite and politically correct as we watch our country and basic morality going to hell in a handbasket, or rather on a smartphone or laptop. Way to go, Steve Ray.
You can get that article at the CatholicRC.org or JesseRomero.com. We also have one more article today. Boy, did it go by fast. Are you surprised that the media throws a hissy fit over a photo of the president praying? Jess, what do you think about that?
I got no problem with that. I think it's a good thing, don't you? Well, here's some of the quotes from the article.
Yeah.
It says the Pew Center asked Americans whether they thought religious institutions had a positive or negative effect on the way Oh, sorry about that. I got the wrong article. Here it is. The Hissy Fit article.
Yeah.
It says the liberal-run mainstream media is in a tizzy over a photo that shows church leaders laying hands on President Trump and praying over him. Let me stop there. Do you got a problem with people laying hands on Donald Trump and praying over him? Do you have a... I don't. I think it's a good thing. Article says, some in the mainstream media have mocked the photo while others seem utterly confused by it. Then there are those who have condemned the act, citing separation of church and state. Well, the article says, the Christian ministers and leaders who have met with Trump earlier that day stated they were praying for that the president would receive guidance. That's a good thing, in my opinion.
Amen.
Protection. That's a good thing, in my opinion. And supernatural wisdom, the article says. The people ridiculing the photo probably have no idea that this is what Christians and people of faith do. They pray for people, and oftentimes they do something called laying on of hands, which is done frequently throughout the Bible.
Yes, and despite the Presbyterian background of Donald Trump, began having closed-door meetings with leaders who supported him and eventually acquired the circle of about 25 faith advisors. The circle included many prominent leaders, former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, Pastor Paul White, senior pastor of the New Destiny Christian Church, and I think James Dobson, founder of Focus on the Family. Now, after his win, President Trump's inauguration speech had religious undertones. I have no problem with that. Even quoting directly from the Bible with the Psalm 133, he also mentions God saying, "There shall be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. And most importantly, we will be protected by God." I love this statement, and I'll turn it back to Jess. During one of his first interviews as the president, Trump told David Brody of Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, "I've always felt the need to pray. This office is so powerful that you need God even more." He went on to say, "There's almost not a decision that you make when you're sitting in this position that isn't really life-altering position. So God comes into it even more so." Thanks be to God. Last thing, and I'll turn it to Jess. More recently, during a commencement speech at Liberty University, the largest Christian university in the United States, he boldly told the class of 2007, thanks be to God, listen to this, everyone. Is this microphone on? Listen. In America, we don't worship government. We worship God. Thanks be to God for that clarification.
Probably one of the most powerful paragraphs in this article. The article is called "Media Throws Hissy Fit Over Photo of the President Praying." It says, quote, "Besides just talking about God, however, the president is practicing what he preaches. Unlike many presidents of the past, Trump has kept many of the promises he made to Christians. While on the campaign trail, Trump had given a list of potential Supreme Court justice nominees. This promise was kept with the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, who was considered more conservative than Justice Samuel Alito. He also kept promises that he made to the pro-life community. For example, within 72 hours of becoming president, he restored the Mexico City policy that prevents the use of tax dollars for abortions that are performed in other countries as part of their family planning program. He also overturned a directive put in place by Obama that forced states to fund the abortion giant Planned Parenthood. And also, his warm friendship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also been a welcome reprieve from the tensions that had escalated over the past 8 years under Obama's leadership.
And in his first 100 days in office, 70% of evangelical Christians approved the job Trump was doing, even while his approving rating is just 39% overall. 3/4 of evangelicals still approve the job he is doing. Now, obviously, we need to be praying for our president no matter who the president is. We need to be praying for him. So, of course, it helps when he says things like, "As long as I'm president, no one is going to stop you from practicing your faith or preaching what is in your heart." See, that kind of statement warms my heart as a Christian. And again, we're at the end of our time, but I want to encourage you, if you want to hear this show again, because I think it was a very good show on giving you inspiration, you can go to CatholicRC.org, or if you want to get our iPhone app, you can listen to the show, or go to JesseRomero.com or CatholicRC.org. Also, I'm giving away Jesus, I Trust in Thee. It looks like I'm going to be calling you folks back If you just go with the message machine, because I'm going to come out and call you here, you can get a DVD that's a $20 DVD for free. You just pay the shipping and handling, and you can also get Father Calloway's Mary and the Mystery of Femininity. 2 videos by Father Donald Calloway that should fire you up and give you great inspiration on your faith. Call 877-526-2151 or go online to CatholicRC.org. And by the way, if you're selling your house, go to our website, CatholicRC.org. We have a pro-life realtor program that supports us here at the Terry and Jesse Show.
If you want to hear what Bishop Sheen believes about the Israelites, about the Jews, go to my website and you'll see what Bishop Sheen says about the Jewish people and Israel. Go to my blog, JesseRomero.com. Also, if you want to hear a spiritual analysis of immigration, not a political, not a spiritual analysis of immigration, legal and illegal, go to my website. I blogged a lengthy essay that I wrote on the spiritual problems of illegal immigration. Let me give you my perspective on this article that says media throws hissy fit over the president praying. Here's my perspective, okay? I believe that the media, they hate the idea that a president is so closely associated with prominent members of the Christian faith, both Catholic and Protestant. I don't think the media is comfortable with that. The media would prefer that our presidents would be separated from any Christian influence. And also, I don't think the media can really stomach the thought of people praying for the president. I think the mainstream secular media, I think they think that's like beneath, or they have contempt for that action. That's beneath the office of the president. And finally, I think that the media has done a good job of making all the presidents prior to President Trump really put their faith under a bushel basket, and they're upset that this guy seems to wear his newfound faith on his sleeve, and they can't make Donald Trump basically renounce his faith now that he's in office, and that's what they want. They want him to put his faith under a bushel basket, and Jesus says, nope, can't do that. That faith, let your light shine before men.
Well said. Last good news story is this. Priestly ordinations in Scotland reach a peak, and it's, again, traditional Catholicism being preached. Here's a young man saying, I have to say, young men are calling out for something that's radical because they have been sold something that's false. Reality of the world at the moment, he told the Scottish Catholic Observer. What is he saying? Hey, real-life Catholicism breeds vocations. Again, if you enjoyed the show, and I'll mention we're going to be Monday through Friday filling in for Joe Sikora, and well, he's on vacation. So the Terry and Jesse Show will have 3 hours of programming. We'd love to have you come in and join us. Tell your friends. And don't hesitate to pick up Father Calloway's DVDs on Jesus I Trust in Thee by calling 877-526-2151. Full sheen ahead. God love you.